Welcome to the SaaS Marketing Weekly podcast with me, your host Ryan, the founder of Rocket SaaS. And today we have Jamie Skeels back in the house. We are doing Challenge Jamie again. I don't know if you listened to the previous episode of Challenge Jamie, but we are back with another one. We need to get you a jingle.
I know, we need to.
I'm going to get you a jingle. But Challenge Jamie, for those of you that don't know, is where I give Jamie a fictional B2B SaaS brand that has some problems in their marketing. And if Jamie was their head of marketing, what would he do to solve those problems? So the scenario that I'm going to give you today is you have got a B2B SaaS brand that is in a very crowded space. There's a lot of competitors in there. A lot of the competitors are kind of looking similar services, similar pricing. It's quite hard for them to stand out.
Yeah.
The size of the company is about 50 to 100 people. So they've had some really good growth over recent years. Marketing budget is decent. It's like 20 grand a month. And growth has essentially plateaued over the last kind of 6 months or so.
Okay.
The investors are not best pleased, Jamie. You've just been hired to sort this out. How are you going to tackle this?
Pressure's on.
The pressure is on.
The pressure is on. Okay, well, that's an interesting one. And I think it's quite common as well. I think that's something that a lot of companies will come up against at some point. So obviously they've reached a point, like you've mentioned, where they've had like demand capture activities set up. Maybe they're doing some lead gen and they've worked okay. They've worked well up to this point, but it's plateaued. So really what's happened is they basically maximize their ability to win business from the 5% of buyers who are in market right now. So their priority, when I'm looking at it from the outside, their priority now is they need to be able to scale their demand capture engine by reaching the 95% of people who are not ready to buy yet. And basically influencing those people so that when they do go in market, we're going to be first to mind. And that's how we're going to scale that demand capture engine. Because right now they're fighting over that 5% and they're not going to see any more sort of return from investing more time into that. So from my perspective, first thing we're going to do is probably look to redeploy budget towards demand creation. So from my perspective, without looking at the business and their specifics which is going to influence it, like I would use the 60-40 rule to deploy budget. So this comes from the Ehrenberg Bass Institute and the LinkedIn B2B Institute. Basically, the kind of it's a helpful bit of advice and a standard rule that you deploy about 60% of your budget towards sort of demand creation, brand building efforts, and about 40% of your budget towards demand capture and activation efforts.
So you're going to have to be quite brave then. You're going to have to potentially have a difficult conversation with the CEO and whoever to say that I'm going to take some budget away from like the bottom of the funnel of trying to get people to book demos, and I'm going to put it into something that's not actually going to get an immediate return.
Yeah. So you can do it gradually. It doesn't have to be done, but that's kind of the aim towards those numbers.
So are you going to have a conversation to say that we're probably going to have a dip in leads for maybe a quarter? And then it's going to ramp up afterwards? You're going to have those sort of difficult conversations, you think?
Yeah, I think it depends on the circumstances of the business. Like I said, there's ways to do it gradually. I think as the call set Cognizant had a really smart way to approach this, where they basically ran a test and then use that test to validate that demand creation can help scale the efforts and built gradually over time and sort of redeployed more and more budget towards different initiatives. But I think overall, there are going to be conversations. You're going to have to say, you're going to have to demonstrate that what we're doing now will not get us to the goals where we need to go. Especially if you're growing, if you're a SaaS business and you're looking to grow over time and you have aggressive targets, you have to demonstrate that what we're doing now will know it's served us to a certain point. It will not help us get to the next stage of growth. And so there has to be a transformation. Yeah.
And also, like, you'll probably, in this example, this fictional example, it's definitely a real life example I've seen many, many times, is that they will, if they've got 20 grand a month budget, for example, the data will show you that a lot of that budget is just not working. So like I met a guy the other day that is currently putting 4 grand a month through LinkedIn ads, and he's been doing it for the last 8 months. And he said it's not resulted in any revenue at all. It's got a bunch of crap leads. And I said to him on the call, I was like, turn it off now. as soon as we finish this call, stop spending it, and we need to do something else.
Figure it out.
Because a lot of people, like in this fictional example I've given you, they've obviously had growth in the business, the marketing team have done well, but now it's plateauing and things aren't working the way they used to. But they're probably still pumping 10, 15 grand into LinkedIn ads, for example, and it's just not getting a return anymore.
Yeah.
So just because you've done it and that's in the budget, don't just throw money away for the sake of it. So hopefully what I'm saying is the first thing you do obviously is analyze what's happening, and you can say, right, we'll keep Google ads going because that's definitely working, but that we can half the LinkedIn ads budget without it really impacting lead gen that much. And then suddenly you've just unlocked your budget that you want to do with this new thing you're talking about.
Yeah. So that's the first thing. It's there needs to be a plan in place to redeploy budget to demand creation. So then we need to think about, okay, how do we build a demand creation engine? What do we actually look to do? So from my perspective, first of all, we need to decide on what topic we're going to build our content around. I'd recommend that you think about the problems that your product solves, and basically just doesn't have to be no more complicated than build content that helps those buyers solve those problems on their own without your product, and build that content and answer those questions. Start there. That's going to be a really good place to start. It's going to make you really relevant when those people do go in market, because you're already front of mind for those problems, and it makes you more easy to recall when they do go in market. But pick that content and pick what you want to be known for. That's the first starting point. Second step, I would say, is then, okay, how do we create content that's actually going to cut through? And I mean, the easiest way to do that when you're starting out is you need to select and find a relevant subject matter expert within the business, or it can be outside of the business, but that's something you're going to have to set up some sort of partnership around, or just have a regular sort of program where you're reaching out to people. But find some subject matter expertise, and then you need to start extracting insights from those people to feed into the content that you build. That's going to be a really important step, because if you're just creating, particularly if you're a marketer, and you're creating content for HR professionals, if you're just creating blogs yourself, or you're recording a podcast yourself, you're not an expert. You're not going to be able to help those people with their problems in a meaningful way. The expert in your business, they can actually make an impact because they have real world experiences, they have learnings from their job, and they'll have authority with the people that you're trying to reach. So that's really important. Start working with a subject matter expert, feed into your content, create content that's going to move the needle. And then from there, what I'm going to look to do, because now we're in a position where, again, like we said, we want to start reaching the 95% of people who are not ready to buy. You need to pick your channels. So you have your content, you have your subject matter expert, you know what topic you're talking about. We need to think about, what channels can we reach the majority of our market regularly in the place that they're spending time, where they're hanging out. So this is what a lot of people call awareness channels. So for the majority of B2B, the really typical one's going to be LinkedIn. LinkedIn's going to be a big one for a lot of B2B companies. But again, this is going to be different depending on who your buyer is. So you need to know your buyer to understand what channels to pick. Don't just pick channels because they're the standard for B2B. But typically we're going to be looking at things like LinkedIn, email marketing, even though it's a little bit more traditional, there's still a big one. There's still a place where you can reach your buyers usually. YouTube, podcasts, lots of other channels as well. Even events, to be fair, can still be an important one for certain industries.
So ultimately, you're saying is probably a shift in the type of content that you're creating. I mean, I see this a lot of companies that get to this stage. Is the bottom of the funnel's good, the middle of the funnel of case studies, testimonials is decent, and top of the funnel is just lacking. So you're saying that's where you go to is look at what top of funnel things are being created. Stuff like this podcast is classic top of funnel, and webinars and blogs and just general thought leadership.
Yeah,
because you find that companies that have scaled and done well is usually ties in with the founders of the business, the thought leaders being too busy to actually help out marketing and help content, but you will need to bring that back and get it out there on many different channels.
Exactly. You need to get that content and then start reaching buyers on those channels that we were just talking about. And as you start doing that, that's what we're aiming to do. Is that, again, we're not trying to convert those people when on the spot. We're not trying to force them into a sales conversation. We're trying to stay front of mind with them. We're trying to shape the perceptions about your company and about your expertise, trying to build affinity with that buyer and just make them aware of us. Super important. They need to be aware of who we are. And that's how you make that impression. Using content over time is a long-term play. It's not something that's going to get results in like a month, but ultimately what you're going to do is if you're solving problems for your buyers and you're educating them and providing them value, over time, those people are going to reach a point where potentially they may be a market for what you're selling. And if you do that over a long enough period and you also educate them about your products at the same time, you're going to be in a really good position to be first on the consideration list when they're ready to buy, which means more people are going to probably be interacting with your demand capture engine. And that's kind of how you scale beyond just fighting on Google Ads, just sort of like doing lead gen initiatives. That's how you scale it. So that's kind of where I'd be looking to start with this company, I think, is like, how do we scale beyond what we've been doing? We have to set up that demand creation engine. We have to build systems and a media machine to distribute content. And we have to have expertise to make that content cut through enough to make an impression.
Yeah. And you need to be brave enough to take some budget out of the bottom of the funnel, out of those sort of bottom of funnel ad platforms, put it into the content. Be brave enough to say to the CTO, so the CEOs, that maybe this is going to have a potential dip in lead to start with.
To get specific about how you deploy that budget as well. Like if we're creating all this content at the top of the funnel and we've already plateaued on demand capture, what I'm going to be looking to do, particularly in a very typical B2B SaaS company, is I want guaranteed distribution of that content. I want to make sure that that content is reaching the exact buyers that we want to attract to the business.
So you do it with ads?
Ads, yeah. Ads is, it depends on the buyer. Again, it depends on the company, depends on the buyer, depends on your space. But a lot of the time, I'm going to want to make sure, especially with like a 20 grand healthy budget, like we can split that budget like nicely to still make sure we're capturing demand. But what I want to do is I want to be guaranteeing that like all of those like blogs, articles, videos, podcasts, webinars, etc., we're getting that to our exact ICP, guaranteeing eyeballs on that content. And that's what's going to kind of supercharge our demand creation efforts, basically, because organic, like you want to build up your organic engine alongside that. You want to build up your organic channels, but obviously you can't guarantee exactly who sees it. And you can't guarantee that it's going to get the reach that you need, particularly if you're a fast growing company. Ads is a good way to shortcut that, basically.
Yeah, I think, well, B2B SaaS companies where LinkedIn is their main channel, like organic is sometimes a lost cause, in my opinion, but particularly for the smaller companies, not the personal brands. People's personal brands on LinkedIn, massive thumbs up from me. Yeah, put loads of effort into that. But the organic page is like, think about it. Like nobody wants to follow a B2B SaaS brand on LinkedIn. Nobody wants to follow your company page. Like, sorry, even my company is, a marketing agency, but like no one really wants to follow us on there unless we were putting loads of effort into like entertaining content and memes and funny stuff to make people laugh. I've seen that stuff perform really well, but in terms of like, people just don't really follow company brands on LinkedIn that much. It's right when you get a bit bigger and you have loads of organic followers, yes. But no, I would say ads really is the way to get it out there, particularly if you are in that startup scale up.
Saw a stat the other day about company pages, actually, that I think only 1% of the audience or followers see the post now. And I was like, that is...
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is demoting the engagement. So a company post won't get seen half as much as what an individual post. So yeah, I agree. A lot of people make the mistake of creating all of this good content that you talked about and just posting it organically. So I'm not putting ad budget into that because it's not going to get many direct leads. And that's the wrong attitude. If you put all this effort and money into creating content and you just post it organically, it's potentially a waste. You need to be using ads to pump it out there. But Jamie, I think we're out of time for this episode. We're going to get kicked out of the studio, but thank you so much for coming in again. Our most regular guest, our most loved guest, I shouldn't say that, arguably our most loved guest. But thank you so much for coming on. We will get you back. I think we're going to be talking about LinkedIn ads.
So we get a jingle in next.
And we'll get the jingle in next time. And also I should say that if you enjoy this episode, you enjoyed what Jamie had to say, you should go back to the previous episode where we talked for about an hour about that essentially demand creation. So check that one out. But thank you so much. If you want to check out our agency, rocket-saas.io, if you want help creating this SaaS marketing content, just to have a chat with us. That's essentially what we do. We create content for B2B SaaS companies. We pump it out there with ads. We improve website CRO. We create you a SaaS marketing strategy, I should say. So yeah, go to our website and book a call. But thanks so much, Jamie. See you next time.
Thanks so much.